On this edition, we look at the future of cycling with Alberto Contador's development squad, Polartec under-23 team.
When you actually see him in the flesh, it's kind of, yeah, it's a bit strange, but you realise why he's done what he's done. I mean, I've ridden with some riders, but I've never seen anything like that when he attacked in the training. It was like.
There's the legend of the Muur as the iconic climb returns to the Tour of Flanders.
The intensity is like nothing else in cycling. Even the mountain stage in the Tour de France don't quite match the Muur on Tour of Flanders Day. I think it's the best fan experience in sport and in cycling.
But first, we're off to Gent Wevelgem with Chantal Blaak.
To be a professional, it takes a lot of work. You need to work hard, and otherwise you don't make it. Yeah, especially in the winter. I do a lot of hours, but also a lot of gym training. That's everything. That's your rest, that's your training on the bike, that's your training in the gym, that's your recovery, everything. And then when the races start, you still work hard, but you also need to be really rested for the race. Also, it's not possible to do something next to cycling. I think for me, it's everything about my bike. In Holland, a lot of people ride the bike. I was 11 and I did a race on my normal bike. Everyone could do it, all the children. And I won that race on my city bike. It was really funny, actually. Yeah, it was a high handlebar, only 3 gears or something. Yeah, and we get, it was like normal sports shoes, and you was wearing your own shorts and you get a t-shirt from the organization. And then afterwards I could go to the final, and I also won the final. And then in the final, the first prize was a membership of a cycling club. So that's why I started. You have to ride to school by bike, so that was already 3K, I think, on primary school, and then on the high school it was 15K for me. So then, yeah, you have to ride your bike five times a week already. Yeah, that makes you. It doesn't matter which weather it was, you just go by bike. Yeah, I think that makes you stronger. When it's cold and grey and boring, yeah, when the weather is like that, you just need to do it. Then it's your work, and yeah, at that moment I don't like it so much, but when you come home and you did a good effort and you trained well, then I'm always happy. You can feel when you have good legs, and that's always nice, but you don't really want to have good legs in training. Yeah, for your morale it's always nice to have good legs, but you have more days that you don't have good legs than you feel great on the bike. Yeah. Gent Wevelgem was nicer for me, but because I think it shows that Drenthe was not a lucky shot. I was really good at the moment, and it was 1 week later, so yeah, it shows that I was not lucky in Drenthe, that I was really good. Yeah, Gent Wevelgem, it was a hard race from the beginning because there was a lot of crosswind, and we did that climb, the Camelberg, a few times. So yeah, I don't know, we just raced it, and we were there with 5 in the front group, with a group of 25, something like that. So yeah, you just do your thing. You know, we have to race together and we have to attack one by one. And if you see Lizzie going as she got cut, then you know this is a good moment. So yeah, I took it. Yeah, and then I heard in the radio, Chantal, keep going, you have a gap. And I was like, oh, that's a long way to the finish. But yeah, I trust the director totally and kept going. It really felt like a time trial, but a time trial after a long race is different than a normal time trial. But it was really hard. But it was nice to see the last 3K that I had a big gap and that I could enjoy it. Yeah, and the last meters you think, yeah, then you believe you're gonna win, and then of course you can celebrate a bit. I think I'm just a type of rider for the classics. So I'm built for classics and it fits me. Before the race we have a plan, and then mostly in the race we keep to the plan, but you never know how you feel. So then you also need to communicate well. We respect each other, we are honest to each other. And yeah, you can also be in the group with good legs and don't have opportunity, but yeah, that happens when you are in a good team. But you also need to be a bit smart and see the game of cycling, and I like that about it. It's like everything. It's the wind, where the wind is coming from. If you see the road is turning, you know you have to think already how the wind is at that point. You have to feel what other teams are doing, see moves, because it can be the winning move, positioning, tactic, everything. It's always good to know each rider, but not too much, because my experience is that you have to be focused on yourself, and then it brings you more than when you are focused on others. But of course, you need to know the strength of your concurrents. You always race for the win. And I always want to win. If it's for myself or for a teammate, doesn't matter, but I like to race for the win. But it's also hard because it's a lot of pressure, and you never know, because everyone can win the race.
La gente nos conoce a nosotros, es gracias al ciclismo, es lo que sabemos hacer, es lo que nos gusta, y bueno, esa fue la idea, ¿no? Empezar además con una filosofía muy clara, que era la de ayudar a los jóvenes, ¿no? Durante su fase de formación, mientras están intentando ser ciclistas, a que se formen no tan solo como ciclistas, sino también como personas, ¿no? Honestidad, sacrificio, trabajo en equipo, compañerismo, esos son el tipo de valores que intentamos inculcar en los corredores.
Se empezó con Junior, luego con Sub-23 y también se incorporó a la escuela de jóvenes, y es sobre todo porque aunque el ciclismo profesional en España está al máximo nivel, en la base no está igual. En la base no hay las mismas posibilidades, no hay los mismos equipos, y de cierto modo pues por eso creamos la fundación. Dijimos que teníamos que poner en marcha la fundación para intentar ayudar a en diferentes aspectos que habían influido directamente en mi vida, ¿no? Especialmente pues, en dos. Uno es la enfermedad que me sucedió en el 2004, el ictus.
Nosotros en torno al ictus lo que tratamos es que la gente lo conozca. Cuando Alberto sufrió la enfermedad o el ictus, nosotros no sabíamos qué nos estaba pasando, ¿no? Entonces la labor que hacemos en la fundación es intentar comunicar los síntomas previos.
Y luego pues el ciclismo, en la parte de las bicicletas.
It seems like there's a bit of hype around the team, around Pinto in general, because we've been out training for a lot of hours, and we take up quite a lot of space on the road with like 35 guys with the junior team riding, the staff. But we get a lot of respect from the people in Pinto. They want to see us do well, which is nice for sure. I think that the beliefs and the values that Fran and Rafa and Livry, all the staff, are really pushing with us, is going to make us much better cyclists in the future, because we just believe in hard work that gets results and nothing else.
Muy difícil educar, es lo más complicado yo creo que tenemos en el proyecto. Intentar gestionar los sueños que tú acabas de decir que tienen todos los corredores, porque todos tienen el mismo sueño, que es el de ser ciclistas profesionales, ¿no?
Asusta, porque yo, por ejemplo, veo lo que hay en mi casa y lo que cuesta, y dices, y eso, yo digo, tengo que ser capaz. y no sabes si vas a ser capaz, ¿no? Porque a lo mejor mañana no soy ciclista profesional y dices, no tengo una carrera, no tengo... ¿Qué va a pasar? ¿No? Eso sí que me preocupa un poco, sobre todo si no consigo ser ciclista, ¿no? Pero yo tengo muy claro que lo que quiero ser es esto. Bueno, pues creo que está cerca, pero queda lo más difícil. El último salto, que es el más complicado. Pero bueno, vamos a luchar. Yo tengo la suerte de poder entrenar con Alberto y bueno, este invierno ya he salido con él. Y ha habido un momento que se ha puesto a tope. Y pues yo creo que íbamos 30, nos hemos quedado 10 y luego nos hemos quedado 2 corredores con él. Y bueno, yo he podido ir con él y la verdad que he sufrido mucho. Es todo el día muy rápido.
When you actually see him in the flesh, it's kind of, yeah, it's a bit, first it's a bit strange, but you realise why he's done what he's done. I mean, I've ridden with some riders, but I've never seen anything like that when he attacked in the training. It was like, yeah, it was an eye opener.
Evidentemente yo estoy también muy ilusionado con todos los corredores de la fundación. Yo creo que más que superar en victorias es que disfruten con lo que hagan. Si consiguen disfrutar más de lo que disfruto yo practicando mi deporte y practicando mi trabajo, yo creo que eso es para sentirse muy afortunado.
Mur de Geraardsbergen is the wall of Geraardsbergen. The climb is so steep that the locals refer to it as de Muur, which is the wall in Flemish. At its steepest, the Muur is 20%, which is 1 in 5. Over the course of its length, the average gradient is 9% over just over a kilometre, but the steepest sections are 1 in 5. Those are the hardest bits. Eddie Planckaert, who won the Tour of Flanders in 1988, described the Muur as a rendezvous with your character. And it's actually, for all that it's a very technical and varied climb, it's an utterly straightforward challenge in the race. They're 250 kilometres in. They ride as hard up it as they possibly can, and the strongest riders are left at the top. The intensity is like nothing else in cycling. Even the mountain stage of the Tour de France don't quite match the Muur on Tour of Flanders Day. I think it's the best fan experience in sport and in cycling.
To remove the Muur from the race just killed the race for me, because that was the image, it was the iconic moment. That was when the race really started, and that's what I dreamed about doing as a child until I was much older.
It's amazing to ride on the Muur. In the race, it's crowded. I mean, it was like like riding into an arena. Especially in the old days when there was I don't know, maybe 3,000-4,000 people on the entire climb.
Yeah, the Muur is really the symbol of Flanders. I remember when I was a kid watching Tour of Flanders on TV. The first image I recall is Museu or Bartoli or Baldato attacking on that climb.
It's so incredibly steep. You can't really stand on your pedals because it's cobbles, but it's always great to be there. There's a lot of spectators. It's narrow and it's only small space, but the noise there is always great.
Fans in general were dismayed at the Muur being taken out because it was such a photogenic part of the race, also such an important part of the race, and people don't generally like change, so they reacted very negatively against it. The reaction among the locals was fairly bad. There was a mock funeral procession held up the Muur where they carried a coffin, presumably holding the body of the dead Tour of Flanders, and carried it to the top of the climb. The climb as we know it, as the crux of the race, has been going since 1973. That year they moved the finish to Ninove, and the Muur was placed much closer to the finish of the race, and that's when the climb became really important. Merckx is an unusual case. The Flemish fans never really took him to their hearts because he wasn't really from Flanders. He only won the race twice. I say he only won the race twice. It's still impressive to have done so, but other people had won it more times than he did. He never dominated it, and that's partially because it was a smaller, maybe more parochial race in Merckx's heyday. Also, it was an easier race when he was at his peak, and he often got to the finish in the first group but got out sprinted by faster sprinters. The finish was in Gent for most of his career. So it was only when the finish moved to Ninove in 1973 that he was able to maybe do a bit better in the race. In 1975 he won it after attacking, I think, 75 kilometres from the end of the race, and went away with one other rider, did all the work to the finish, and won the race for a second time. Johan Museeuw was, his nickname was the Lion of Flanders, and the moniker Lion of Flanders is only given to the most Flemish riders who are the very best at what they do. Museeuw was brilliant at the Tour of Flanders. It suited his abilities. He tended to attack from a long way out. He attacked twice to win the race on Ten Bossestraat in Brakel, which is the town before Geraardsbergen. But one of the iconic images of Johan Museeuw is him riding alone over the Muur van Geraardsbergen to win the Tour of Flanders in front of his adoring fans. One of the most famous in recent years was when Fabian Cancellara and Tom Boonen, who's also a Belgian champion, were away on a long-range attack. They rode together through the streets of Geraardsbergen, and then Cancellara left Boonen for dead over the Muur, and the amount of time he put into Boonen, which was almost a minute by the end, was seen as one of the great all-time efforts of the race, and it was on the Muur that attack went.
I am one of the lucky guys that has won both, so I like the old one better. I mean, the new Tour of Flanders is harder. It's more compressed into the final, more climbing into the final. On the old parcours, there was more possibilities. I like that more. I mean, Tour of Flanders isn't about having the hardest, more climbing kilometers in the world. I mean, it's about giving different riders different opportunities. You're always going to have the best guy at the finish line. But right now, with the combination Quaremont and Paterberg, it's always been decided in the last 25 kilometers. And in the past, sometimes it was at 50, 60, 70 Ks already when the decisive move went. Now this year, we'll see. I mean, maybe this year will be different. It's a little bit different, but there's still the last 50 Ks are almost the same. So maybe it's because I did the old Tour of Flanders more than I did the new one that I liked it more, but I like it when the race is more open.
Since 2012, the race has finished in Oudenaarde, and there have been a series of laps which each differ from each other, but it's been a very different beast to the way it used to be, which was point to point. I'd say that every year since 2012 there has been a great winner of the race. You can't deny the quality of the rider who's won. There's been Tom Boonen, Fabian Cancellara twice, Alexander Kristoff and Peter Sagan. And so only great riders have won the race. However, I feel that the race has been almost so hard that only great riders can win. One of the things I loved about the old route, which went over the Muur and then Bosberg and then the run into Ninove, was that although strong riders were obviously to the fore on that route, there was also an element where a cleverer rider could compete with the strongest rider. There was an element of timing, of tactics.
It's great that we're going back to the Muur, and I think it's great that it's back into the event, but the whole point of it was a focal point. That was where the final, where the big champions started hitting out and smashing each other.
I think it's really nice. I think every cycling fan is happy to have the Muur back. Also when probably they are still a bit sad that he doesn't have any more that key position he used to have, but it's also true that the new Tour of Flanders for sure is also really interesting. It's new, so it doesn't have that is a mythical, traditional history.
I feel the new position in the race is a risk on the part of the organisers, because it's been moved 95 kilometres, I think, from the end of the race, and therefore, though it will still look the same, and I'm sure many people will go partly out of nostalgia, partly because it's the Tour of Flanders, and so it will look brilliant. It won't have the same impact on the race as it previously did. That's somewhat of a risk. I feel that revisiting the Muur in this way is somewhat like getting together with your old girlfriend many years later. It's a nice idea in principle, but maybe doesn't work in reality.
That's all for this week. Join us next time on inCycle, but until then, keep up to date with us across social media.